Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Taking Liberties for this year. My name is Lee. I'm in Western Australia. I've got my two regular co-hosts, Zeev and Vickers.
G'day.
Go.
And we've got Austin, who is a regular, semi-regular, occasional guest.
Very infrequent
regular
contributor.
Regular
Well, actually-
irregularity.
Well, he used to be one of the hosts.
Yes.
I was a founding host.
You
in
are,
fact.
yes.
Yeah.
And I know this because I tuned into the last episode of the first season and you guys were doing a Q&A. So Austin is actually in Jaipur in India.
Wow.
And do I see a mustache there?
You do see a mustache.
All right.
But I must ask you not to bring it up again.
All right. What's something we will bring up is we've got two topics to discuss today. We're going to be talking about Emma Alberici's giant big turd on revenue taxes or corporate revenue and big evil corporations. I need a button that I press that brings up in big flashing letters.
Flashing.
Big evil corporations.
I can set that up.
That. Yeah. We're also going to be, so we're talking about big evil corporations, and we're also going to be talking about the child safety and cyberbullying and the there's been a call, there's a sort of a commission going on in Queensland to sort of see if they want to have a children's cyberbullying commissioner of some sort. So we're going to talk about that. But let's first go into evil corporations, because we here at Taking Liberties love evil corporations. Sort of, not really. We're libertarian, so cool, we got the sign, big evil corporations. Emma Alberici, who's the senior economics correspondent at the moment at the ABC, she put out an article last week that sort of talked greatly about the evils, all these big businesses paying no tax. And then it was lots of controversy and it was pulled, and they've put up a renewed version, a changed version on the ABC website. And we have thoughts, we have feels. So Vickers, you wrote quite a lengthy Facebook post on this topic. Did you want to go first?
Yeah. So the thing that was brought up when this article got taken down, by the way, it should have never been taken down, because I believe bad articles should stand. You should be able to stand behind them. Yeah. Well, no, I consider everything ever published as a matter of public record. Everything is a matter of public record, and you should be able to stand by what you've said or issue corrections to the to the effect of where you were wrong. Now, in Emma Alberici's case, sorry, I'm getting lots of messages. What's up? So, in Emma Alberici's case, the issue is that basically Craig Emerson, after the article was taken down, said, "I can't see any factual errors in this." And I went, well, it's not so much that there are factual errors, it's that she's determined the wrong implications from certain things. So, there's a section in her article where she goes, the corporate tax rate in the UK went down while the corporate tax in America stayed. Yet, between 2006 and 2013, there was no extra job growth in the UK in comparison to the US. And I went, I can think of a very fucking good reason there wasn't any additional job growth. Let's take a look at the GFC, for example. And basically what I'm saying is, it was just a very facile, sort of the kind of thing that you would see from, I don't know, a year 11 socialist student, or a year 11 socialist doing, economics.
Working for a union, putting out press releases?
No, I'm saying high school. So high school economics courses. Yeah.
Joke. I'm making fun of you for saying economically illiterate stuff. Keep going.
Yeah, but the point is, it's very facile. It's very facile, very limited in its understanding, and it just doesn't look like it doesn't look like she's done any multivariate analysis whatsoever. Luckily, her new article looks like it's done a little bit more of that, but it's still this is not the kind of crap you let year 11 students get away with. I don't know how the ABC can still publish it. Anyway.
There's a problem with the whole publish and then correct as well. It's good that there's a correction, and I want to give them credit for that. But the point is that people only remember the first thing they see. That almost no one reads the redacted version of the article. They read the original one, and those are the figures that stick in your head. Those are the things that stick in your head. So something like 90% of people who read the original article will not read the second one. And I made that number up completely, but because of the anchoring effect, you're going to go and you're going to remember 90% of the original readers don't see the redacted version, and it's a very powerful thing, that effect, that anchoring effect.
That's worth noting, Austin. And another point worth noting is the IBC was very anxious to tell viewers that it had actually flagged this article as one that they wanted to take down the day after it was published, and not, that is to say, before it had actually received complaints from government ministers about the article itself. But even so, there's still it's still worth noting, even as we're talking about the economics, that there's something that should make us all a bit uncomfortable about a media organisation being told that its editorial standards don't suit the government of the day. And yes, in this case, we may believe quite rightly that Emma's in the wrong, but it's still something that is problematic about a state-run media organisation that is being told to take down articles by the government of the day, and there's this perception, and perhaps we may never know whether it was rightly or wrongly so, but there's still a perception that it was driven by government pressure. But I guess going into the merits of the article, which, by the way, is still available online at johnmenadu.com, and we'll put up a link, I assume, to the original version of the article as well. One of the interesting things is that it basically says that, look, corporate taxes are, in the author's contention, not that significant a decision when companies choose where to base their operations. It's just one factor of many. And to quote Emma Alberici, will I be closer to my main customers where I open up? Where is the best talent located? What are the labour costs? How onerous are the regulatory hurdles to investment? Is the culture and language easy to navigate? Is the country politically stable? And is there respect for the rule of law? And casual Fridays. And casual Fridays, yes.
Very important.
Well, I mean, these are actually all fair comments. Those are all fair factors that businesses do take account of when they choose to establish a business. I think the larger issue with Alberici's case is that, tax cuts do drive investment in themselves. I mean, if you look at a corporation's or any corporation's accounting figures, if you reduce an amount from their tax bill, some amount will go to shareholders, some amount will go to employees, and some amount will go towards direct investment. And all of those things will be used by those people either for direct investment themselves or for whatever purpose they want. I don't know, employees might buy a car, a shareholder might keep it in their bank account, and the bank will use it to lend money to someone else, which in turn will drive investment. And that's one of the problems, I think, with this article, that it assumes that the only way in which corporate tax cuts or tax cuts of any kind can drive investment is by just that specific company announcing a specific project, rather than looking at the economy as a whole and saying, hang on, if shareholders profit, then they're going to use that money in a place where taxes are lower, all else being equal. Yes, and the other point is they're going to use that money to drive investment, even if they park it in their bank account, or even if they use it in their own way to open a business or what have you. Anyway, those are my
It's the classic seen/not seen issue.
Exactly.
And that actually sort of ties into one aspect of the original article, which really bugs me, which is, so it's sort of saying, cutting corporate tax doesn't really help workers. Well, workers are not the only people who matter in the economy. It basically ignores the opportunity for companies to reinvest and the value of shareholders. I mean, that's, in the end, they're the ones who create these companies. Without shareholders, you don't have companies. And exactly. So you want a return for shareholders, but because they're big, dirty, evil people, because they're, whatever, those people don't matter. So I think the whole premise
Well,
of the article
one
is
comment I would add to that. Yeah, workers do matter. Yep.
Yeah, workers do
Go
matter,
on,
but
Vickers.
they're not. It's not primarily like if they
workers
don't benefit
are
and
consumers,
shareholders do
and that's
benefit.
what we're missing as well. That's what Emma's missing as well. That workers are consumers. Okay,
Yes.
workers can get a workers can get a pay rise in one of two ways. One is by a bonus in their salary. The second way is if they go to the supermarket and the cost of the products at the supermarket have gone down. It's the same way if they're purchasing those products, their salary has effectively gone up because they are spending less to get the same things, right?
Hey,
So, yeah, go.
yeah, you know what my favorite thing that both of you guys completely missed was that Emma's document never looks at the effect of new jobs being created from the result of a tax cut, right? And in fact, she never goes into it other than to say, hey, during the GFC there wasn't as much of a job growth. And I sit there going like, but the graph she lists shows a nice job growth at the beginning until the GFC, and then goes down. And I'm just like, why did you pick 2012? If I picked between 2006 and 2008, those figures would have been stellar, right? So I mean, there's a little bit of
That's worth noting.
It's data manipulation, is what it is.
Yeah, there is
that time period. It's intended to tell a story. It's not intended to tell the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that occurs. So like for example, and she puts the graph in there to her credit, the full graph. But I sit there going like, so why are you focusing on these 2 points and not this point? And it's all over the shop. So
yes, you're quite right, Vickers. And can I just note briefly, there's a lot of very good papers, including one by Thomas Sowell, freely available online, that goes into a lot, chock-a-block full of how throughout history, when tax cuts go down, particularly the corporate tax, tax revenues go up. But this is unrelated, I'm sorry, to the point about wages. But sorry, go on.
Well, the thing is,
I'd like to make an unrelated point.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've just started my own consulting business. So if anyone listening has jobs for me, then contact the Taking Liberties page. I can do almost anything. Austin Erickson, Optimization Nexus. I'll fix your problems. All right, continue.
I guess the point was somewhat related anyway.
Yeah.
Not quite on wages, but economic growth generally. Anyway, go on. Not yours, Austin, mine. Go on, because
I'm always careful about making the point of trying to link tax reduction with wage growth, and it's because it's really loosely coupled, and people don't understand why wage growth and growth in general aren't necessarily linked, and it becomes really, really obvious to people if you say, well, if the improvement has come from offshoring jobs, right, that doesn't, then obviously you're not going to see an improvement in the growth of wage labor. So I never try to make that point that wage growth and tax growth from tax reduction are linked, and we should always be honest, saying that's not necessarily the case. Indeed. But one thing you always see is growth is like you said, a growth in the payouts back to investors, a growth in the payouts to workers, and new jobs. You almost see all three of those things happen.
Payouts to workers through lower prices, rather than wages, you mean?
Yeah. Sorry, through low prices. My bad.
And there's a whiff of sort of economic imperialism in there as well, that you have people saying that wage growth in other countries isn't important. That, if you can raise the wage in, for example, India by offshoring some jobs, that's real human benefit.
Of course
it
is. Absolutely.
And it's also a bad thing.
And marginally, it's actually much more human benefit in the sense that, I mean, without
diminishing
suggesting
marginal
that there's
returns of money and so on.
Exactly. The living standards of people over there are going to be improved far more, comparatively speaking, by that work.
Hang on, there was a free economics episode on this where outsourcing actually technically improves the living standards in both countries. It's just not immediately obvious how that happens, because what actually tends to happen is the people who lose their jobs on this side of the fence, or like on the Australian side of the fence, go on to do different jobs.
Yep. Exactly.
Anyway, yeah. So,
we're
everyone
upgrading from a
sees
fence
price
to a
cuts.
wall, though, under the coalition government.
Yeah, but the big thing is, I was just going to point out, if you really get down to it, what all of these people like Emma Alberici and everyone who was like hinting towards, hey, companies should pay a 30% tax rate and they shouldn't get any deductions for losses and anything like that.
Yes.
Guys, that's basically a 30% GST. Right? And that's what people need to understand there in their head. When people say, I want companies to pay 30%, no deductions, nothing, effectively you're arguing for a 30% GST.
Which is a little scary, frankly. But leaving that point aside for a minute, another argument that Emma makes is that this will have a cost in the way of $65 billion spent over the next 10 years. And that cost is taxpayer revenue foregone. It's not a cost. The money isn't being spent. It's actually not being spent in the first place. It's being returned to the people who earned it. It's not a cost in that sense.
Well, it's not being returned.
Argument.
It's not being returned, right?
It's not being taxed in the first place. Right?
Yeah.
I correct myself. So actually, it's worth pointing out, and maybe that you might see this as a downside of lowering taxes. It's worth pointing out that there's a lot of data suggesting that cutting tax rates actually increases tax revenue, which is the point that I mentioned a little earlier in the podcast, but I just wanted to link it briefly to the article itself. So it was not totally unmoored from the discussion anyway.
I mean, I try to hold off discussions on the Laffer Curve with relation to Australia because the last time let me put it this way. We've decreased taxes and we've never increased the revenue as a result of it. And the reason why is because unlike the US and other places, we have systems in place already to minimize double taxation. When the US reduces their tax, they also reduce the double taxation. Because of our imputation and other systems where we sort of don't double tax people, we're pretty. The Laffer Curve is a much higher tax rate in Australia than it is in the US.
Just for those viewers who don't know, I'll leave that up for a little bit.
Which we can't see because it's in red pen under an orange light. So.
My other pen just died.
All right. Just remember, if you want
okay. So the Laffer Curve.
Contact Austin. He can do crappy pen on a from India anytime you like.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And by way of brief background to anyone who doesn't know, the Laffer Curve is basically a curve that is the invention of Art Laffer, an economist who says basically at some point if you increase taxes enough, your revenues will go down because people will stop complying with the tax law. They will start investing their money elsewhere and so on and so forth. So Vic's point is that actually over here our tax rate can be higher because we don't engage in what's called double taxation. So, that means that, for example, shareholders don't pay tax on the income they receive after a dividend is paid to them. Whereas in the United States, that is the case. If a dividend is paid in the United States, then the shareholder will pay income tax on that dividend. Explain it over.
Yeah. So one last thing I would like to pick up just before you sort of move on. So one of the other aspect of kind of going to what Vickers was just saying about the 30% GST is that really what this, particularly the second article, hammers on. The second article, the revised one that's on the ABC website, is much more about which companies are paying which tax. How many companies are not paying tax. And the reality is they're not paying tax because of the rules of the game that the government has established that abide by everybody. So if you make a loss in a previous year, you can roll that forward and not pay tax in future years until you've sort of essentially, taken back the loss. So, sort of erase the loss.
Well, that's only because we do corporate tax funny in this country. So when you or I overpay taxes, they give us cash back, right?
Yeah.
When a company overpays taxes, because they still have to pay 30%, right? But they acquire tax credits for their losses.
Yep.
Mm. So because they acquire these tax credits, they don't get the money back at the end of the year, right? Mm. The government's taken that money and they just go, well, we're not going to give you the money back. We're just going to give you tax credits instead. Yep. What she's saying is they shouldn't have this. And I'm going, well, if you don't have it, you've got to give them the money back, right?
Well, and I'm pretty sure that's not quite what she's saying either. Go
No,
on.
no, no, no. She's not saying that she shouldn't. She's arguing about the tax credit system itself.
So
in the section she goes. Yeah.
Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, in the section where she goes about Qantas's Qantas's tax credits from accruing losses until 2013, she's saying that she's saying that they shouldn't get them, and I'm sitting there going like, well, if they don't get them, you've got to give them money back in the first place. It means when they file it, you have to give them a refund just like you give an individual. Because they're still technically overpaid. Tax credits don't just magically appear out of the air.
No.
Which part of the article is this exactly? The dividend imputation often overlooked section? Is that it? That you're
No. It's in the new article where she's talking about how...
the revised article.
Yes, the
Yeah.
revised.
I gotta say, it feels like we're bullying her over the internet.
Yeah, good lord.
I
Oh my
kind of
goodness.
I
That's
am-
what you call a
I'm-
segue. Unfortunately, Austin, because of the beer consumption, you kicked in too early with that one. So you should have saved your ammo, because that would have been good in about 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
You peaked too early. Unlike your social maximization, your segue
that back up
maximization is
there.
much lower.
Oh, there is actually a section on naming and shaming, isn't there?
Yeah.
This is the difficulty with the articles that are just totally taken down and then completely revised with no reference to corrections or anything in the new article. It leaves us in this. Where are you getting at? Because in which section does it go into this? I'm sorry.
So in the new article, right in the first part, she's talking about how Qantas has not paid any corporate tax since 2009. And it goes into how they've been making losses through their subsidiaries and all this other stuff. And that's why they've got zero corporate sales tax. Sorry, zero corporate tax.
Yep.
So it also mentions depreciation provisions, which basically means for the non-accountants out there, when you buy a piece of equipment, you need to depreciate it to sort of represent the degradation of its use. So, and with these planes, it's going to happen over
degradations of its value.
So basically, if you imagine the effective life of a plane is 30 years, then you divide that by that 30 years, the value by 30 years, and you just essentially reduce the value of that plane every year, and that counts as that goes towards that offsets your profits. So essentially, Qantas, if they've bought up a ton of planes and made no profits for a while, which is what they have done, they're going to not be paying corporate tax for a while. And essentially, Emma Alberici doesn't like that, which is just dumb.
But that's my look. The point is, she's saying tax credits are the problem, right? And what I'm saying is, if that's what you think, right, then the counter proposal to that tax credit system, right, is that you pay them a refund, just like you do with personal income tax, because this is an income tax.
All right.
Okay.
We'll move on because we're running out of time, and Austin had a great segue. So do you want to do your segue again?
No, the moment's over. Let's just do it.
Disappointing.
It sounds like we're cyberbullying her. I will say it for him.
Okay,
but anyway, which leads into our discussion of cyberbullying.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So there is a wonderful bit of legislation called the Enhancing Online Safety Act 2015, which makes for a provision for an e-safety commissioner. Essentially, it's there to stop child bullying. The Queensland government is talking about setting up their own, or they're having some sort of commission to go into proposals to have their own. Essentially, the legislation allows for the government to ask social media platforms to take down content. So if somebody makes a complaint suggesting that a child is being bullied or harassed, those sorts of things, essentially the government can say, please take this content down, and they have 48 hours to comply, or, bad things.
I wanted to start off by saying that, cyberbullying aside, any sort of government thing that includes the phrase, it allows the government to tell social media platforms to take down content, sounds like communist China. That's not something that any government should need to do. Be able to tell people to take down content. That's scary to me.
So all of that aside, does anyone remember? Wait, hang on. All four of us grew up during the zero tolerance on bullying era, right? Do you remember how that worked?
I got bullied a lot. So
Yeah.
I don't remember there being zero tolerance.
This is the
on bullying.
thing. This
No.
is the thing. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I grew up in when that policy was in place. They used to keep going on. There is zero tolerance on bullying. There's zero tolerance on bullying. I swear to God, it happened a lot. But the worst part was, I remember, if you were a kid that was bullied, right? The way the schools implemented zero tolerance was they went, I'm going to get rid of the person who's accused of bullying and the person who is saying that they're getting bullied, and both of them would end up getting suspended until they kind of made up that. No, so the case in point on that one is that large kid. I can't remember his name, but he picks up that tiny kid that was bullying him, and he just smashes him to the ground. Does anyone remember that video?
I definitely remember that video. It is something.
Yeah, so they suspended both kids, right? And it was just like, well, why would you? Based on that video, right? I wouldn't have touched either of those kids because it looked like the situation was taken care of, right? The little kid learned not to bully anyone, and it didn't look like the big kid really ran around doing that a lot. So
The little kid walked away with a concussion.
He didn't walk away with a concussion. He walked away with a funny leg. But the point is, lesson learned, right? Don't pick on someone who can beat the shit out of you. However, the Queensland police, sorry, not the Queensland police, the Queensland education system took away the lesson from that by their zero tolerance bullying policy, to suspend both kids, right? And it was a fundamentally bad policy, right? Because if you think about it, no one learned anything.
Well, I guess if one of them was making fun of the other and the other one was responding with physical violence, I think they both might need to be suspended, because
That sounds like taxation to me.
I wouldn't. Wait, it was.
well,
it's just like, wait, hang on, that is a
case to be made.
Hang on, that is. We must have seen
If
some.
they're both bullying each other, I haven't seen the video, but if they were both bullying each other, then there is a case to be made for both of them to be suspended.
Okay. You might want to go see this video because it's a little kid basically poking and pricking at this big dude for a solid 30 seconds, going like, "Why aren't you hitting back? Why aren't you hitting back?" Before he lifts him up and smashes him to the ground
On his head.
Okay.
And the founding fathers would have intended him to shoot him with a musket.
I'm just not sure that that's a response that we should encourage in children.
I'm not out there to encourage it, but I think that's how it works. If someone
maybe instead of deleting content, we should have the government send people to smash the kids on the ground.
Yeah. But anyway,
back to the original thing. So,
that's what I was trying to do. Back to cyberbullying.
Going away from to cyberbullying as a topic. Basically, Miss Palashuk is very much concerned that a teenager of about 14 years old has taken her life recently, following some cyberbullying, it is said, and she's pointed out that the National E-Commissioner can impose fines of up to $18,000 a day on people who engage in it. And she has pledged to meet with, or rather she's already met with the E-Safety Commissioner, and they were urging the E-Safety Commissioner to establish a presence in Queensland because of this recent suicide. So it seems as if she's calling for the E-Safety Commissioner to basically start fining people rather than suggesting that the Queensland government itself is going to start fining people. So it seems that news.com.au article we were relying on is a touch inaccurate, but even so, it's worth noting that she's calling for federal government action, basically.
Yeah, so
she's saying that the Safety Commissioner perhaps has been sitting on their laurels, maybe, doing nothing at all when they should be out there whacking every e-bully out there with fines aplenty. Go on, Lee.
So there's a couple of aspects. Firstly, the notion that they need to set up a presence in Queensland is kind of dumb, since it's cyberbullying and the internet is not just purely in Queensland. So I think there's a lot of sort of just general grandstanding in this particular issue. And the way the system works for the cyberbullying, for the E-Safety Commissioner, is it requires complaints, and then there's a process, and then there's a takedown notice from the office of whatever it is, office of the e-safety commissioner. So all of that's been in place, and yet this still happened, which I think leads to the issue of, well, this is not a very effective system, and probably won't be unless you go for some even more, like a truly draconian system, which allows for essentially carte blanche. The minister just does whatever they want at any time they like. The reality is, 48 hours.
Well, what they really need is
messages
SWAT
already
teams
received
to just bash through the doors of the 14-year-old cyberbullies that have bullied this poor woman. No, look, I'm being facetious, but the point is that these are terrible issues that these kids face. And I guess the fact that there is an e-safety commissioner that hasn't addressed it should give us pause about whether an e-safety commissioner is the right way to address these kinds of issues.
Yeah, so like,
I think
the government can levy fines against the social media platforms, but that doesn't change the fact that the bullies already sent the notice. They've already got it. I mean, as somebody who received bullying, like going to a kid that's already told me I'm fat and a loser 48 hours after the fact and say, you take that back. It's like, well, I've already heard the message. Like,
it's not even taken back, I should add.
Exactly. So
it's taken down from the social media provider.
So,
and you know what you become then?
And the only way they can be fined is if they don't comply with that. So, so, okay, they can levy $18,000 a day against Facebook. Facebook's going to take it out as soon as they get the notification. Like, they would probably do that anyway. If somebody complained, I mean...
someone can click report on Facebook. They already have a system.
Go on, Austin.
This is just maybe a question that I'm old-fashioned. I don't get it. But why is cyberbullying worse than bullying without the prefix? Why do we need special rules for addressing that? And I don't know.
Because it's on the internet.
But it sounds like we just put
and
cyber
the internet
and made
is
it
a
sound
scary
scarier.
place.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think that's essentially it. The internet is a scary place for people who are over 50 and vote, or over 40 and vote. And in some sense, it has to be controlled. It's like the Wild West.
Well, I actually disagree. I think there is something different about the internet. I mean, yes, obviously what you've said is true, that there's a lot of scaremongering by boomers over the internet. But previously when I was bullied in school, I just rode past the bullies and they threw rocks at me, and then eventually I get home and they wouldn't be there to throw rocks at me.
But now they can follow you at home.
Yeah, they can go. They can get you at any time, and I suspect if malicious teenagers really want to make your life difficult, they can do it in a lot of ways. Not the least they can be anonymous.
Kids are terrible, and they're also clever enough to figure out ways to be terrible, no matter what restrictions you put on them. Right? Like I remember, when you're a boy, even if the teacher reprimands the bully, that might make it worse for you. It doesn't make it better. Like if you go and run and tell the teacher, it's there's not an easy solution to that, but I'm pretty sure the solution is not giving the government the power to take posts off Facebook.
Yeah.
Quite right. And go on, Vickers.
So I was really curious about this. So I went and looked up Mindframe, which is apparently the national media people. Sorry, these people basically look at mental health issues, and I was trying to suss out exactly how much of an issue this must be. And for the most part, it looks like suicide rates around the country are down. For the most part, that's until you get into teenage suicide, and then when you look at that, fucking hell, little boys are fucking going out there and killing themselves. I did not see that. It's been going up for years.
My
I didn't know that.
What about girls?
Relatively flat.
Oh, okay. So just boys.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
That is really intriguing. I did not. I'm just first of all, I'm glad someone's keeping a track of it, but fuck me, I did not even know that. If you want, seriously, you guys should check out Mindframe. It's people that look about suicide facts in Australia.
And the ABC has an earlier article from the year before. That Mindframe thing is from 2017, and the ABC has one from the year before. Suicide for young Australians highest in 10 years.
Yeah,
interesting.
And it's because of the little boys. This is amazing.
Wow. Well, when you say little boys, do you mean people under pre-teen?
I mean teen boys aged between 12 and it's insane.
Okay.
It's almost tripled over the last 10 years. Seriously, if you are between 12 and 16 and you are having some issues and you're a male, for God's sake, get some help.
Get some help.
Yeah, please don't be a statistic.
So
you should probably include a link to Beyond Blue or something.
Want to bring up, which I think the legislation as it is mostly just kind of window dressing. Like, I don't think the policy itself is, you know, a terror. Like, I mean, it's a bad policy, but like, it's not like it's not North Korea we're dealing with. But I think one of the issues is the ratchet effect. So, because this policy will fail, it will inspire politicians, you know, and that's what we've seen. Essentially, this young girl, Amy Everett, who died. You know, this is the catalyst for future interventions by politicians, because it didn't work. It's going to keep happening. They're going to keep wanting solutions, and you're going to get an ever increasing sort of array of government interference. And you know, you can look to the UK to see what the kind of insane, you know, social media stuff they've got going on, where a guy gets his dog to do Heil Hitler on Twitter, and he gets the cops show up and arrest him. So, you know, there's all sorts of so that's probably my main concern with this particular policy is it's not bad in and of itself, or no more worse than any other government intervention, but it will encourage further, you know, policy change.
Can I also
final thoughts?
note,
We need to wrap this up.
And
so, yep.
To wrap it up, final thought. There's in that article on Mindframe, though, the 10-year statistic seems pretty bad. Can I note it also has a chart of going back about 20 years, though, and on that basis, the number of deaths for 15 to 19-year-olds males is down. And on the 20-year line, again, it's slightly down for women too. It doesn't go into below 15. I don't know if that data is available or not.
I misread it. It was 15 to 19. The age range I was looking at is 15 to 19.
I see.
Not 12
Okay,
to
so
16.
over 15 to 19, it's up over the last 10 years. But
yeah,
okay, well, at least it's down over the last 20. So I mean, maybe if we take a long view, it's not that bad.
Sure. But I was looking at the 10-year. Sorry, I was looking at the last 10-year, and I'm just like,
Indeed.
how has this gone up so much?
Yeah,
It's there.
Yes.
There's definitely look.
There's
seriously,
definitely something that's happened.
Look. If look, I cannot stress this enough. I wasn't aware of all of this, but if you just need someone to talk to, there are helplines available. I think Beyond Blue is
Beyond Blue.
Beyond Blue is the first thing that comes to mind. If you
13, 11, 14. If anybody
Yeah.
And if you are being bullied, it gets better. It does get better.
It does.
People don't bully me anymore because of the mustache.
Yeah. And
No,
really.
Once you go into
your beard
outside of
productivity.
high school, it's over. Yeah, you just don't experience it in much outside of high school or at all. I think, comparatively speaking, anyway. So.
Spoken by four neckbeards. It gets better.
Yeah.
We've all been there, and it gets better.
Yeah.
I still bully Vicus, but other than that, I think he's all right.
What?
Okay.
I don't even notice it.
There you go.
See?
There you go. So ineffective. All right, and with that sterling revelation, we'll wrap things up for this week. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Austin, thanks for you specifically for joining us.
See you guys next year, probably.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Everybody, don't forget you
Next
can like, share, and subscribe. Sorry, Vicus.
Go on.
I go for it.
Yeah. Facebook, iTunes, the rest of it. And we'll be back again next week.
Indeed.